I truly believed our marriage was built on a strong foundation of mutual support and understanding that would withstand any storm. For 10 years, I stood faithfully by my husband Leo as he navigated the demanding, cutthroat world of venture capital, where fortunes were made and lost before lunch. His career was a constant whirlwind of high-stakes deals, investor meetings, and immense pressure that often left him exhausted and distant. My own job as a paralegal at a respected but quiet firm provided the stability we needed to survive his volatile income. I meticulously managed our home, our complex finances, and our social lives, creating a peaceful, organized sanctuary for him to return to each evening after battling the corporate world. I was genuinely proud of the life we had built together, what I thought was a perfect balance of his fierce ambition and my nurturing contentment. I never imagined that the very stability I worked so hard to provide would one day be used as a weapon against me, proof of some perceived inadequacy. The first signs of trouble were subtle, almost imperceptible at first, like small, hairline cracks appearing in what I thought was a solid wall. Leo started coming home later and later, his mind still racing from the day's negotiations and strategies. He became distant, lost in his own thoughts, even when we sat together on the couch. He began asking me questions that felt less like curiosity and more like accusations. "Are you really satisfied just being a paralegal?" he would ask over the dinners I carefully prepared. "Don't you have any bigger dreams? Don't you want to make a real impact?" I tried to explain that I deeply loved my work, that helping real people navigate the complexities of the legal system was genuinely fulfilling and meaningful to me. But he just shook his head, a faint look of disappointment on his face, as if I were a complex puzzle he could no longer solve or even bother to understand. The occasional comments soon evolved into full-blown, exhausting arguments that left me emotionally drained. He started using sharper, more hurtful words like stagnant and complacent to describe my life and career. He told me he was rapidly evolving, climbing higher, and that I was content to be left behind in his dust. "We're just on different paths now," he said one night, his voice cold and final, devoid of its former warmth. The word that cut the deepest, that echoed in my mind for weeks, was complacent. He made my happiness and satisfaction sound like a profound character flaw, a lack of drive. He couldn't see that my ambition wasn't for flashy titles or corner offices, it was for a happy, balanced, and meaningful life filled with purpose. Our home, once a sacred place of peace and connection, became a silent battlefield of unmet expectations and unspoken resentment. The final, shattering end came on a predictably gloomy, rainy Tuesday evening. He walked through the door, his expensive suit speckled with cold rain, and didn't even bother to take off his soaked coat. He looked at me with a strange, completely detached expression, as if I were a stranger. "I'm leaving, Eleanor," he said flatly, his tone devoid of any emotion. "This isn't working for me anymore." He told me he needed a partner who truly challenged him, someone with real drive and a killer instinct, a fellow shark. Then he said her name, Isabel. She was a fellow executive at his firm, Apex Ventures, a woman I'd heard him mention with increasing admiration. His intellectual equal, he called her, the words slicing through me. In that single, devastating moment, the 10 years we had shared, the love, the struggles, the shared history, all evaporated into nothingness. The pain in the days that followed was a physical, crushing weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. For what felt like an eternity, I moved through our empty, echoing apartment like a ghost, touching the remnants of our life together. I felt like a complete failure, my worth defined by his rejection. I had given so much of myself, my time, and my energy, and it had all been deemed insufficient, worthless. But after a solid week of endless crying and suffocating self-pity, a new, unfamiliar feeling began to emerge from the ashes of my heartbreak. It was a cold, hard knot of pure determination tightening in my stomach. His words, "You aren't ambitious enough," played on a cruel, endless loop in my mind. A fierce fire I didn't know I possessed ignited within me, burning away the sadness. If cold, hard ambition was what he valued above all else, then I would become ambition itself, in its most potent and powerful form. What Leo never knew, what he never bothered to ask about, was that I had a rich and secret intellectual life entirely separate from my paralegal work. For years, I had been quietly obsessed with the dynamic startup ecosystem that he lived and breathed. While he talked endlessly about his deals over dinner, I was diligently studying them, analyzing every angle. I read dense prospectuses, analyzed complex market trends, and devoured dry industry reports for fun, finding a strange excitement in predicting outcomes. I discovered I had a real, innate knack for it, a gut feeling for potential. I could spot a promising, visionary company from a doomed, copycat one with surprising, consistent accuracy. It was a hidden talent, a private, stimulating game I played, never thinking it would amount to anything more than a personal hobby. Sitting completely alone in the apartment we once shared, the silence pressing in on me, I remembered my grandmother's inheritance. It was a modest sum she had wisely left me, and I had always kept it in a separate, untouched account, a personal safety net for a true emergency. It wasn't enough to retire on, but it was a seed, a foundation. A powerful, audacious idea began to form in my mind, cutting through the grief. I would use this money, my secret knowledge, and all the pain he had caused me as rocket fuel. I would step into the very world he adored, the world he thought I was too simple to understand, but I would do it from the shadows, where I could observe and plan without being seen. I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't do it as Eleanor Shaw, the unambitious paralegal. The tech and investment world was still very much a boys' club, and I needed to be taken seriously from the first second. I created a powerful new identity from scratch, M. Reed. The name was intentionally ambiguous, carefully chosen to allow people to assume I was a reclusive, brilliant man. I built a sleek, professional website and a powerful, influential LinkedIn profile filled with industry jargon. M. Reed was a mysterious, silent partner, a genius spotter of talent who communicated only through email. I became a ghost, a phantom, operating silently and efficiently right under Leo's arrogant nose in the industry he thought he dominated and I could never comprehend. My first investment as M. Reed was the most terrifying, heart-pounding thing I had ever done. I spent weeks obsessively researching a small, innovative company focused on creating advanced biodegradable packaging solutions. The broader market was skeptical, but I saw a clear, inevitable future where sustainability was not a niche but a paramount global concern. With trembling hands, I transferred $50,000, a huge, frightening portion of my entire inheritance, into their seed funding round. My hands shook visibly as I clicked the confirmation button, my stomach churning with fear and excitement. I had just bet my entire future, my security, on my own judgment and intellect, with no one to blame but myself if I failed. For an entire, agonizing year, I watched the company's progress with a nervous, hopeful heart, checking news alerts daily. Then, the incredible news broke. A major multinational corporation acquired them for a sum that made headlines across the business pages. My initial investment had multiplied 20 times over, a life-changing return. It wasn't a fluke or blind luck. My meticulous research, my sharp instinct, had been profoundly right. The rush of validation was incredible, intoxicating. I wasn't just lucky, I was genuinely, undeniably good at this. I immediately, confidently reinvested the entire, staggering profit, my self-confidence growing exponentially with every dollar earned. Over the next 3 transformative years, the legend of M. Reed grew from a whisper to a roar in investment circles. I strategically backed a promising solar tech startup, a revolutionary medical device company, and a tiny, obscure AI firm that everyone else had arrogantly overlooked. Each one, against the odds, became a staggering, headline-grabbing success. My secret net worth climbed steadily into the tens of millions, a number I could scarcely believe. Yet, I consciously continued living my quiet, unassuming life, terrified of tipping my hand. I drove my same old, reliable car and diligently worked my paralegal job, a satisfying double life. The disconnect between my two existences was surreal, a secret source of private strength. I was a phantom of finance, a powerful whisper in the ears of the mighty. I always kept a casual, discreet ear on the industry gossip surrounding Apex Ventures, my interest more than professional. Through specialized newsletters and careful conversations with mutual acquaintances, I learned they were in serious, deep trouble. Leo and his new partner, Isabel, had led several high-profile, arrogant investments that had spectacularly turned sour, burning through capital. The company was bleeding money and rapidly losing the confidence of its crucial clients and investors. The word throughout the financial district was that they were desperate for a significant, immediate capital infusion, a white knight investor to save them from total, humiliating collapse. I listened to it all with a quiet, focused, and deeply personal interest, knowing my moment was approaching. One ordinary morning, a pivotal email arrived in the official, polished M. Reed inbox. The sender was Arthur Wright himself, the founder and powerful CEO of Apex Ventures. His message was uncharacteristically polite, almost reverent in its tone. He humbly requested a meeting to discuss a new, promising, fund they were desperately launching. He wrote that securing an investment from the renowned and insightful M. Reed would be a great honor and a powerful signal of confidence to the entire skeptical market. The irony of the situation was so thick and profound I could almost taste it, a metallic flavor of impending vindication. I read the email 3 times, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face, the first genuine one in a long time. Leo's boss, the man he worshipped and feared, was literally on his knees, begging for my help, for my money. I composed a calm, supremely professional reply, my fingers steady on the keyboard. I agreed to a meeting. However, I cleverly wrote that M. Reed preferred to remain an enigma and that I would be sending a personal representative to hear the pitch in my stead. The stage was now perfectly set. The intricate plan that had been forming in my mind for years was finally, gloriously about to be executed, and I would be the one holding all the cards. The day of the meeting, I dressed with deliberate, symbolic care, choosing my armor for the battle ahead. I selected a simple, well-tailored, elegant black dress that was professional but intentionally understated. I didn't want to look like a flamboyant billionaire. I wanted to look like myself, the woman he remembered. The Eleanor Shaw that Leo had so easily dismissed and discarded. I arrived at the sleek, imposing glass and steel headquarters of Apex Ventures, my past and future colliding. My heart was a frantic drum in my chest, but I kept my breathing even and my expression neutral, a mask of calm. I was ready for my reckoning. I approached the modern, minimalist reception desk, my heels clicking firmly on the marble floor. "Hello," I said, my voice clear and steady, betraying none of my inner turmoil. "I'm here for a meeting with Mr. Arthur Wright. My name is Eleanor Shaw." The receptionist made the call, repeating my name into the phone with a polite smile. I knew the confusion and panic that name would cause upstairs in the executive suites. A few tense, drawn-out minutes later, the elevator doors slid open with a soft, decisive chime. 2 men stepped out together. Arthur Wright, looking anxious, and my ex-husband, Leo, trying to appear confident. Leo's face contorted dramatically from professional calm to utter confusion and then to pure, unadulterated irritation when his eyes landed on me. He strode forward quickly, his voice a sharp, angry whisper meant only for my ears. "Eleanor? What is this? You can't be here. This is a critical, confidential business meeting. Whatever this is about, it can wait." He genuinely believed I was there to cause a messy domestic scene, to embarrass him emotionally in front of his powerful boss. He was trying to shoo me away like an inconvenient stray cat, a nuisance from his past. Before I could even form a response, Arthur Wright placed a firm, restraining hand on Leo's arm, effectively silencing him. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face with a mixture of desperate hope and palpable nervousness. "Ms. Shaw?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly respectful and cautious. "Are you the representative from Reed Holdings?" I saw the exact, horrifying moment the question registered in Leo's brain. His jaw went completely slack. His eyes widened in stunned, disbelieving horror. He looked as if the solid ground had just disappeared from beneath his expensive leather shoes, plunging him into a nightmare. I offered a small, polite, controlled smile, the very picture of professional calm and authority. "I am, Mr. Wright. It's a pleasure to meet you in person," I said, my voice even and strong. I gestured gracefully towards the bank of elevators. "Shall we proceed to the conference room? I'm eager to hear your proposal." I walked calmly past Leo, who was rooted to the spot, a complete statue of shock and dawning, terrifying horror. He was completely paralyzed, his mind struggling frantically to reconcile the woman he left for being unambitious with the powerful representative of the most sought-after investor in the entire city. We settled into the lavish, silent conference room with its breathtaking panoramic city views, a room that symbolized everything Leo valued. Arthur launched into his well-rehearsed pitch with the desperate, frantic energy of a man trying to save his life's work from ruin. He clicked through slick slides filled with optimistic graphs and ambitious financial projections. Leo sat silently beside him, his face a pale, sickly mask. He couldn't tear his eyes away from me, his gaze a mixture of disbelief and fear. I listened intently, my hands folded, occasionally asking a precise, pointed question about their due diligence process or their risk assessment models. Each sharp, intelligent question made Arthur sweat a little more under his tailored suit. When Arthur finally finished his presentation, the room fell into a heavy, expectant silence. He looked at me with a pleading, almost desperate expression, his fate now transparently in my hands. "So," he said, wiping his brow slightly with a nervous hand. "What is your initial assessment? Can we count on Reed's support?" I let the silence stretch out uncomfortably, building the tension in the room to a fever pitch. I looked directly at Arthur's anxious face, then slowly, deliberately, turned my piercing gaze to Leo, who seemed to have stopped breathing altogether, waiting for the axe to fall. "I will, of course, need to review the final due diligence reports in greater detail," I began, my voice cool, measured, and laced with unshakable authority. "However, I can tell you that my decision will hinge significantly on my confidence in the team managing this fund." I paused dramatically, letting my weighty words hang in the air, choking them. I locked eyes with Leo, my gaze steady and unforgiving. "I must admit, I have serious, fundamental concerns about the judgment demonstrated by some of your senior personnel. Poor judgment in momentous personal matters often, in my extensive experience, indicates a similar, catastrophic lack of judgment in critical professional ones." Leo finally broke under the immense pressure, the shock wearing off to be replaced by a sputtering, incoherent anger. "Eleanor, what is this?" he demanded, his voice rising hysterically, breaking the professional decorum. "This is some kind of pathetic, desperate stunt, isn't it? You can't possibly be Reed." Arthur turned on him instantly, his eyes blazing with pure, undiluted fury. "Leo. Explain yourself. You know this woman?" I gave a small, cold, triumphant smile. "Oh, we know each other quite well, Arthur," I said, my voice dripping with sweet, sharp irony. "Leo was my husband. He left me because he said I lacked ambition and was holding him back." The blood drained completely from Arthur Wright's face, leaving him ashen and stunned. He looked from my calm, composed, victorious face to Leo's horrified, crumbling one, the entire, humiliating story laid bare in that devastating instant. The survival of his beloved company, his own hard-won reputation, now depended entirely on the generosity and mercy of the very woman his star employee had so publicly discarded and belittled. The poetic justice was so perfect it was almost beautiful in its cruelty. "Leo," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a deadly, quiet, and furious tone. "Get out. Now. Wait for me in your office. We are not even close to being done here." I stood up gracefully, gathering my purse and my dignity, the movement final and decisive. "Thank you for your time, Arthur. You'll have Reed's final decision within the week," I said, my tone implying the answer he already feared. I walked out of the opulent conference room without a single backward glance, leaving the ruins of Leo's career and arrogance behind me. I didn't need to see the aftermath to know his life at Apex Ventures was irrevocably over. He had left me in search of greater ambition, only to discover, too late, that he had foolishly abandoned the most ambitious and powerful person he would ever know. The elevator doors closed softly, and I took a deep, free, triumphant breath, the air tasting of victory and liberation. I had not just won, I had transcended the game entirely. My future was mine alone to shape, and it was infinitely brighter and more beautiful than anything he could ever have imagined for me or for himself.